Hello and welcome to The Premise.
Season 3.
Season 3. Can you believe it? Here we are.
Yeah, I can totally believe it.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
We have so many exciting authors coming up this season. We are leading up to the 4th annual San Diego Writers Festival. It's going to take place in person this year, folks. October 8th at the Coronado Public Library, 2022, live and in person. But today, as you know, I have the opportunity to interview some pretty amazing authors for Warwick's of La Jolla. And for those of you who don't know, Warwick's is the country's oldest continuously family-owned and operated bookstore. Fantastic place. If you're ever in La Jolla, be sure to stop by. We thank them for this interview. So sit back and enjoy. Joe, it's so good to see you again. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. It's always nice to see you. It really is.
It's
I
awesome.
say that all the time,
Well,
but in this case, it really is.
You really mean it? You're not lying
Yes.
this time? You heard it, folks, right from Joey Day. Speaking of, I'm going to introduce you officially.
Sure.
Joey Day grew up in South Central Los Angeles and currently lives in Santa Monica, California. His IQ series has won the Anthony, Seamus, and McCavity Awards and has been nominated for the Edgar Barry, CWA New Blood Dagger, and Strand Critics Awards. The IQ books are currently in development as an original TV series. I know we're not holding our breath because that could be a while, but
No,
they're
we're not.
coming. Or not.
We're not holding our breath.
We're not holding our breath. Those
No.
things are painful, how long they take. It's an emotional roller coaster.
IQ sold in 2015.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well, we're not here to talk about IQ though. We're here to talk
That's right.
about Philip Marlowe.
hmm,
Loved this book. Thank you so much. The Goodbye Coast. First of all, this is a badass cover.
isn't
I love
it?
this cover. Yeah. It's so
The- the-
beautiful.
The designers at Little Brown are amazing. They're just amazing.
Yeah, I was so impressed. I just kept looking at it and thinking, damn, I wish I'd designed that cover. It's cool.
Actually, it's part of why I got the job to write that was covers. The agent for the Raymond Chandler estate was in the airport, and he picked up IQ because of the cover.
Really?
Yeah.
And he was
then,
like, I want this
he
guy.
didn't know me.
Yeah.
He read it on the plane.
I just happen to
Yes.
have it right here.
There it is. He
Oh.
saw the cover. He thought that sounded interesting.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why I read it on the plane. And then he took it to the board of directors, and apparently they decided to give the kid a shot.
So were they actively looking for someone at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They wanted somebody to write a contemporary Marlowe.
Nice. Okay. Can you just take us to that moment when your agent called you and said, so this happened?
There's this big moment of disbelief.
Okay.
It's like, are you sure it's Raymond Chandler? It's not Raymond Chandler, or are you positive?
Yeah.
I was elated. It was incredible. How could you not be so excited? And I was saying, like most writers I know, you really get into a challenge, something new, and it's like a test, but it's fun. And I was very excited, and I was saying that I was also daunted because there's so many Raymond Chandler fans to disappoint, everywhere. But I couldn't be bothered with that. I mean, I can only write the way I write. I can't write in the first person. No, it's just one guy carrying a whole book. I cannot do it.
That was one of my
so
questions.
That was an early decision, just to
Okay.
write the way I write.
Yeah.
I did try first person, but it was too hard. I don't know how to do that. So I decided to just write the way I write, and I do lots of characters and lots of subplots. And in fact, when the estate, the board of directors saw the first draft, they didn't know what it was. Like, what is this? They were expecting first person noir, except in 2021.
No.
And they said, well, who are all these characters? Who are all these people? but I think they're very reserved about it.
Mm.
But I think when the reviews started to come in, they decided, well, okay, this wasn't a bad choice.
Now, when you worked that contract, your agent and you, did you work it out that they didn't really have a choice? Like they weren't going to get to go back and forth and like nix what you did? Like, did they have to give all of the creative direction to you and just hope you did a good job, or?
It's assumed because it's the publisher who's paying me.
Right.
All they do is license. So they don't have any editorial input.
Thank God.
They can. I mean, we ask them.
Oh, well, that's nice.
But we don't really have to ask them.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do get to approve whether or not it gets published. They do that, but not editorial.
Okay. And did you do pre-publication reviews just to kind of show them that this is working?
Yeah, we sent them.
Nice.
We sent them everything, and they were pretty pleased. Yeah.
Well, it's a great book. And I got to say, I hadn't read Raymond Chandler. I know of him, and you've spoken about him a lot. I mean, isn't he one of your like favorite writers from your childhood?
If you're writing crime novels, he's everybody's favorite.
He's the gold standard, so to speak.
He's an amazing writer.
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of started the genre. I guess that's more Dashiell Hammett, but when he was writing short stories, he had been fired from his job. He was a vice president at an oil company. He got fired from his job for drinking and threatening suicide.
Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
Decided to let him go. Decided to let him go. And he was broke, really. He started writing short stories for a pulp magazine called Black Mask. And he wrote one and he sold it for $250.
Wow.
And so that was his start. And he made his living by writing stories until he decided, well, I'll write a novel.
Huh. What year was that? Do you know? Because it was in the 30s that he first published his first novel.
Yeah, it was sometime back there.
$250 seems like a lot of money.
It was a lot of money.
That's kind of, we don't get that today for some articles.
That's true.
That's journalists. True. Yeah.
I was surprised.
Huh. All right. So I want to talk about, speaking of all these characters and creating all the characters. So when you created Emmett and this like difficult relationship, this father figure in Philip's life, talk about how this came to be and how you landed on that relationship between these two.
I was told by my editor in all my books, there is a dysfunctional parent-child relationship. That's true. And my head automatically goes there. I'm not really conscious of it, how it goes there, but I needed basically a sidekick for Marlowe. Mm-hmm. And I wanted somebody where there was a lot of conflict, a lot of friction. And there was an undercurrent of things past. You're trying to create tension in every scene. If they're talking, it has to be about something else. There has to be some simmering issue underneath, or it's just chat. So having a dad who was grouchy and cranky and extremely old school, who eschews everything modern, I thought, I could get a lot out of that. Yeah.
You make a ton of references to the original Marlowe character, the books, the movies. We've got 1920s and 30s. And Emmett happens to be a film buff who is just nostalgic for the 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I literally stopped reading and I started laughing. I was like, oh my God, this is an homage to Chandler. And then we've got Cody, who's one of the characters in the book, and they're trying to save her. They've rescued her and they're trying to keep her safe. And she's sort of like the opposite to Emmett. She's like current 2022 modern day era.
Yes.
And this was intentional, or did it kind of start to? Okay, talk to us about that. It was brilliant.
When I'm creating characters, I'm looking ahead and I'm asking myself, what do I need this character to do? And I'm always thinking about conflict. wherever he goes, whoever he meets, he has to be, something combustible has to happen. So I juxtapose this old school old guy and a 17-year-old who thinks about nothing but being a celebrity. And we'll see what, I mean, I was really, I make these things up as I'm writing. So I only have the idea that they're going to clash. But when it comes time to specifics, I don't really know until 2 seconds before I write it. And that's just the way I write.
I love it.
I have an idea and then I start writing.
Well, and it does feel very organic for me as a reader. And I absolutely loved it. I loved how you were bringing us back to 1930s Hollywood, and you're giving us all these references that, are so critical if you're a Philip Marlowe fan in particular, right? But you're keeping us in the current as well. And there was a tenderness too between these two characters that, seemingly hate each other, but yet have a tenderness as well.
I look for emotion. I'm always looking for emotion in a scene, in a relationship, because I think that's one of the things anyway that readers key in on. They want to feel something when they read. So I'm looking for that. If it's father and son, and I want something emotional to happen between them, or something emotional in their past. And it's instinctive now. I mean, I've written a few books, and so I used to have to think about it, but and ask myself specific questions. But by now, I'm automatically looking for emotion in the scene. How can I get some real human experience and ground it in that the reality is these human relationships. Because I think it gets very thin if you're just doing plot. And you have characters who are just kind of running around. There are a lot of books that just deteriorate, into a bunch of people running around. And I wanted to say grounding, and I think finding the emotion is because they're universal. They keep the novel grounded, even though the scenes may be outrageous, and there are a few.
Did you have a favorite character to write? Was it Philip, or did you have more fun with some of the others?
I had more fun with the movie star.
Because she's so wicked, or what?
She's so wicked, and she's so verbal, and she's so un-PC, And
outrageous. Yeah.
She's outrageous. And let me see, I got something here. So, Kendra's throwing a party for celebrity friends. Marlowe wants to attend with some guests. Kendra, the diva, says no, forget it. But Marlowe twists her arm. And finally she concedes. She says, "You're a tapeworm, Marlowe. You're eating my guts out. Fine, you win. But if you want your so-called guests to attend my party, I have conditions. Don't bring some yokels here from Donkeyville, Oklahoma, playing their harmonicas and scratching their ass cracks. They are not to talk about boll weevil season, or how they eat roosters for breakfast, and that they only wear shoes at funerals and hay rides. And remember, I don't like germs. If your hayseeds bring some mutant strain of hoof and mouth into my beautiful home, you won't get a job finding dead flies on a windowsill." That's fun to write.
That's fun. And it was super fun to read, too.
I'm glad. But I get a character like that is just fun. Just somebody so contrary and yes, so contrary and so unexpected. It's just fun to write. It's like Dodson in the IQ books.
Absolutely. Right. Mm-hmm. So speaking of Kendra and, sort of the difficult Hollywood actress, and we hear so much about the ego and the money and just nefarious crap that goes behind the scenes of filmmaking. And your fans probably know that you were once a screenwriter. Now you didn't get made, I guess is what it's called. And you left.
What it's called.
Was part of this cathartic, like just writing about how ridiculous Hollywood was?
The first-hand knowledge came in handy, but it wasn't. It was sometimes my personal feelings leak through. like about movie making. And, everything now is like a comic book. I can't watch that stuff. I can't. I can't watch, 90 minutes of special effects.
Right.
And when I think about old movies and how they were crafted and how people couldn't rely on special effects, and they couldn't rely on editing, they just had to act. And I really respected that kind of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
That Humphrey Bogart movie in the piece it's really an amazing movie, and it's really well directed. But as time went on, things got worse. Like in the 70s, I think there was a Robert Mitchum version that Michael Winner directed, and it's just awful. It's terrible.
As was most things in the 70s, honestly.
It's true. Yeah.
How much research did you do in preparing to write this book?
I didn't do any preparing. I research as I go. I don't like to research. I really don't. I have a wide breadth of knowledge that's about this thick. It's just.
But super wide.
Yes. And so I research when I need it. I want to know about the golden age of Hollywood, so I'll research it right then. And the trick is to know what you want to know.
Yeah.
To have the question you're trying to answer. So that's the way I research. I have a question, and then I go back in. I go study and see.
Are you the kind of writer that when you're writing a scene, do you just like plow through and get it all down and then rewrite later? Or do you make every scene as good as it can be for that first draft, of course? Do you rewrite the scene and rework it and read it and research?
It's a little of both. I write the best scene I can write.
Yeah.
But then when I read it the next day, it needs to be rewritten. And then when I read it 3 months later, it still needs to be rewritten. So, but I do the best I can the first time out. And I write scenes in some detail. And if I have something I just don't know, I leave it and I go on to the next.
Right. You'll come back to it. You'll figure it out.
Yes. It's a very inefficient way to write.
I don't know. You've written quite a few books.
It's true. But I'm going, I'll start, like I said, I don't have an outline. I start writing. And then I get to about page 60 and I look back and I see all the things that I missed. All the things, that don't track or illogical. And so I have to go back and correct all that stuff and change all the transitions. You change scene 4 and now it doesn't connect to scene 5. So I go back and I do that. And I keep going up and back, up and back. So I throw away many more pages than I keep. Many more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, and just in terms of your writing as a writer, I know you are you've even said you write 7 days a week and you write full day. You get up, you get your coffee, and you write all day. You've been writing long enough that I don't imagine this happened. But did you ever think to yourself, what the hell have I done? Why have I taken this on? Did you ever feel like you wanted to walk away from this task, or did it always feel within grasp, like right there?
I have a pretty good sense of whether a book is good or not. And so I won't let myself write something that's bad. And then I have an editor, and he's sort of my backstop. You will not let me write a bad book.
Thank God, right? Thank God for editors.
Yeah. So it's very reassuring. So I don't really worry about it. I write the best book I can.
Yeah.
And there you go. It may not sell. That's a different question, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, that author-editor relationship is really important because you have to trust that they're going to do you right and that this really does need to be rewritten or this really is crap, regardless of how much you may love a scene.
My editor, Josh Kendall, mostly what he does for me is he finds opportunities. He says, you could write about this. You could enrich in this. And most of his advice is very positive.
Nice.
There's some things like structural, maybe you should switch the chapters or something, but most of his advice is about that. You need a better line here. The character's smarter than this, things like that. But the main thing he does for me is to find opportunities to write about something interesting. And he's invaluable that way, just absolutely invaluable. He told me when I first started with him, I want to help you write the best version of your book. And he stuck to that.
That's wonderful.
He stuck to that. Yeah, it is.
Is he the same editor from your first in the IQ series?
Another editor, Wes Miller, helped me with IQ, the first book, and then Josh took over.
Got it.
Wes Miller moved to another part of the company, and Josh took over. So he's been with me since Righteous.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
It's
a very easy relationship now.
That's great. Yeah. When you were creating Philip Marlowe, were you very conscientious about creating your own version of Philip Marlowe so people didn't think you were trying to recreate Chandler's?
Part of the task was an homage to Chandler, but the other part was creating a character that would be entertaining for those people who had never heard of Philip Marlowe. And so I was conscious of that too. And I thought, well, that's most of it. I mean, in effect, well, in the end, I just had to write a good detective novel. that was it. So I created the characters as I went, and it was a great experience. I was like a very short, non-athletic Tom Brady. I mean, in terms of seeing the whole field and knowing what everybody else was doing, and then hitting your receiver on the fly. Really gratifying thing to do. So that part was the whole writing of it was fun. And when I started with Marlowe, I started with him physically. And I do this very frequently where I find something distinctive and then I build on it. Mike, where is it? Here it is. In this scene, he meets Kendra. Marlowe is looking off, distracted, as if he were bored and thinking about something other than the A-list celebrity sitting right in front of him. Disrespectful, Kendra thought. He reminded her a little of Steve McQueen if Steve McQueen was a rude, insolent asshole. Marlowe met her gaze, and she was instantly uncomfortable. His eyes were the kind that took in everything but gave nothing away. The kind that didn't notice but inhaled. The kind that weren't neutral but assessed, gleaned, and adjudicated. I wrote that first.
I
wrote his eyes first. And then everything came after that, like, okay, well, I got his eyes, now what's he wearing? So it went like that. I'm just adding things. And it's sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm adding these pieces, fitting them in, and sooner or later, I'll get the whole picture. But in the meantime, you
just keep writing. So the place where you chose to plop him in Hollywood, talk about your decision of where Philip lives, why there, and let's talk about his furniture while we're at it.
Philip Marlowe, the original Philip Marlowe, had his office on Hollywood Boulevard and Ivar. And that's where the new Marlowe lives. And Chandler's stories kind of bounce back between glamorous and seedy. So I wanted those two opposites. I wanted Kendra and Malibu and Marlowe in East Hollywood, which is not a nice place. So I knew I wanted to do that. And the case kind of evolved out of that thought that I want to take somebody from Kendra's Malibu world and send them out into a much grittier, dangerous place. And the case kind of grew out of that. So I have this 17-year-old girl, and I make her so that nobody likes her. And she's
Emmett
a
likes her.
giant pain in the ass.
She really is.
But again, that creation was looking ahead to see who she would bump heads with.
Mm-hmm.
I know, Marlowe's got to have trouble with her, and Emmett's got to have trouble with her. So she was relatively easy.
Mm.
I mean, there's like a whole generation of Codys running around out there.
Boy, aren't there? Yeah.
It's not really hard to find one. So that was easy. But yeah, it's at going back and forth between two worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and then his where he lives is an old warehouse. I wanted him to live someplace cool. I mean,
yeah.
Personality,
right? Yeah, it shows a little bit about him.
Yes, and that he has almost no furniture, but the floor is beautiful, and he has no decorations. And in his bedroom, he has this light painting on the wall that he stares at until he falls asleep. Mm-hmm. Those kinds of little quirky things I'm adding along the way.
They're hints.
Yes.
They're hints as to who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a piece of furniture, a picnic table.
Oh yes.
Tell us about this picnic table and where you came to discover it would be his.
I like picnic tables for one.
All
I
right.
like the old wooden ones.
Yeah.
And they're charming.
Yeah.
And my wife and I had always talked about putting one in the backyard, but we could never find one that was as charming as the beat up ones you find in the park. And they had they were highly lacquered or one thing or another, so we never got one. But I've always wanted a picnic table, and it came up while I'm writing about his house.
You got your picnic table.
I got it now. Yes, I've got it now.
It's awesome, and it comes up again. Characters remark on it, like what the hell, you have a picnic table? But it is that quirky side of him that it's a hint, as you say, which I love.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder, have you already started writing the second book in the series? Is it?
I don't know if I'm going to write a second book. I have to get, the estate has to license me. Mm-hmm. And then they have to make a deal with the publisher, and the publisher has to make a deal with me. So there are lots of complications. I mean, I really want to write one, and I told them.
Yeah.
But we'll see. A lot of this is out of my power.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like IQ was slipping into this book? Did you have to be mindful that, or are they just so separate that didn't even happen?
It really didn't cross my mind. I mean, after I got started on Marlowe, he was so distinctive, and the people in his world were so distinctive. I didn't think about IQ. Although I did think about, at one point, IQ and Marlowe meeting.
Yes. Yes. I was actually hoping that might happen, because it could have very easily. Well,
I thought it was too much for the first book.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So I hope to do that in other books.
That would be super badass.
That would be fun. Yeah.
Can you, if someone were to ask you, what's the difference between your Philip Marlowe and the Philip Marlowe of 1930s?
Well, the task really was taking the original Marlowe's attitude, personality, cynicism, and transporting them into the new world. So that was really what I focused on. His personality, his views, his cynicism. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things that I had to move forward. And that's what I focused on. And it's they're hard to write. Let me give you another example.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. The thing with his cynicism is you've got to work it into a scene so that it's not so self-conscious, where you're not it's not so pointed, but it's part of what he's doing. So Marlowe went up on the roof with a tumbler of Old Forester Prohibition-style 115 proof bourbon and a package of unfiltered Camels. He didn't drink or smoke very often, but when he did, he wanted real liquor and a real cigarette. The atmosphere wasn't exactly pleasant. The air was warm and dirty, Saturday night traffic in both directions, endless in both directions. In this Hollywood, there was no romance, no night filled with possibilities. No one was tapped for stardom, and life was not an adventure. This Hollywood was a workaday and ordinary and a grind. I try to fit those kinds of things in with his life. He always goes up on the roof and has his bourbon and cigarette. And so I could take that moment and use it for a reflection.
Yeah, yeah. Which did give him kind of this grit, right? So that also said a lot about his personality. You know, he goes to sit alone, the fact that he has an unfiltered cigarette.
It says a lot about me.
I think it does. But we won't go there. That's a whole nother conversation, right?
Thank you.
But like, you know, bringing a cigarette smoker into a modern day novel, like, you know, was it always, there was just no doubt that he would smoke?
I didn't want him to be a smoker, but, you know,
occasional smoker.
The original Philip Marlowe, he drank bourbon and he smoked cigarettes.
Constantly.
So it was another little cue that I'm trying to be, you know, just the cue that he's sort of like the original.
Yeah.
And it's those little things that work into the scene also. When I write a scene, it's happening on multiple levels. I mean, the scene, the event itself, and then character things like the bourbon and the cigarette and the atmosphere and all of that I'm writing on parallel lines. So, you know, a scene like that, for me, it has a lot in it. There's a lot in this scene and a lot of information and emotion for the reader.
Yeah.
And like his cynicism really is my cynicism. If I was up there that's exactly what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that explains a lot about his tenderness too, because you also can be, I don't know, you're a very kind individual. And so I think that's where maybe the tenderness comes from. And what I've known of you in the last couple of years, and you're so generous with your time and you know, talking about your books and the writing process. So that makes sense that there's a tenderness in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll tell you, there's a scene in the book where Marlowe's father, Emmett, has this little figurine on his shelf of a little girl. She's in pink. Yeah. And there's a little name on it called Susan. And she's just this whimsical little figure that's totally out of character with Emmett. And it's on its own shelf. My mom had that little figurine. She had Susan.
Oh.
She wanted a daughter. And I have 3 brothers. We were all supposed to be Susan.
I wondered about that.
Yeah,
that's
I always found that really poignant.
Yeah,
and that's how it worked its way into Marlowe. I needed things that were soft about Emmett, so he wasn't always grouchy, and I landed on that.
I would have been so excited if I were you and I came up with that and I got to like pull that piece of my mom into the book. That would have felt so good.
Yeah, those moments do feel good. Yeah, when it fits, it applies, or
you're like, I get to do this. Yeah,
I go, that's pretty cool, Ide.
Good job.
You're doing all right.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I think one of my favorite characters is Wren. I mean, Emmett is my favorite character, if I'm honest. But Wren, frankly, she's a real badass. I mean, she knows how to use a weapon. She fights like a mother. I'm not going to say it, but I mean, she can fight. But she's also, you know, she really needs Philip because he has the detective knowledge to accomplish the task at hand.
Yes.
So talk to us about Wren and where she came from. And
she's the Lauren Bacall character.
Okay.
And again, I wanted to remind the true Marlowe readers about the golden age of film and Bogart and all those things. And so I wanted to write a Marlowe character, a Lauren Bacall character, but she couldn't be Lauren Bacall as she was back in those earlier movies. And I wanted somebody who was in sharp contrast to Marlowe. Again, I'm thinking ahead about conflict. And so I brought her, she came from England. She's here from the UK. So she has an English accent, and she has very clear views about what she wants. And somebody that's very, very much in contrast to Marlowe, who makes shit up as he goes along. You know? So I gave her an issue that was mostly heartfelt. I wanted her to be in pain. I wanted the audience to feel for her. And so these were all things, again, that I'm throwing as I go. These things are occurring to me as I'm writing. That she's from the UK, I didn't know that until I wrote it. And her ex-husband and her kid, all these things. It happens instinctively that I know what her husband is going to be like now. And I have to give her a reason to marry him. At the same time, he's a complete jerk.
Right.
But all these things are occurring to me while I write him. I didn't know about her husband until I wrote her husband.
Well, I really hope that our readers get to meet Ren and all of these characters. It's
Me too.
So good. I really hope you get another shot too to write another book. So we all need to sign a petition. Yes. To the estate. But I'm going to ask you, is there a book in the works for IQ? Are we going to see another adventure for IQ soon?
Yeah, I'm working on 6 now.
Nice. Yeah. How long does it normally take you to write one?
About 8 or 9 months.
Wow. No. Yeah.
In the last IQ, in Smoke, at the very end of the book, Isaiah's girlfriend, Grace, gets kidnapped. And so in the new book, the IQ6, I picked that up right there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
of course,
the main story is about Isaiah finding Grace and playing cat and mouse with Skip, this crazy hitman guy.
That guy.
Yeah, that guy. So
I love to hate Skip.
That's where I picked it up. And that's where I'm going.
Awesome. And when do you think that's going to be on the shelves?
Oh, not till 23.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, it's going to be here before we know it. The years they go so fast lately. I'm like, wait a minute, what year are we in? I feel like I missed 2 years completely. I can't remember if last year's 2019. It's just been crazy. How are you holding up?
Oh, fine. I'm holding up fine. I feel like I should be struggling more.
I think some people feel like that.
I mean, social distancing is part of my job.
Yeah.
I have to stay home and write. So it hasn't been that hard on me. It really hasn't.
What about your wife? Now she's stuck there with you as you write.
Fortunately, we get along fine.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. She's very supportive. Yeah. We also have 2 parts of the house. There's her part and my part. And if you want to have a lasting relationship, divide up the house.
I think Julie's going to join us here soon. And I just want to thank you so much. I am so honored that I got this opportunity to talk about this fabulous book and to get to talk to you again. Julie, thank you.
Nothing that I do should be honored. Especially,
I'm honored.
Okay. All right.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. We like having you, Joe.
We all love Joey Day.
I like being here.
And you know what? I'm sure you know this, Joe. Jennifer, you probably did too, but Raymond Chandler lived for a while in La Jolla. He actually died in La Jolla.
Yeah.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time, some writing about like the La Valencia Hotel. So next
Mhm.
time you're down, did you go there, Joe, when you were here for the last event that you had live with us? Did you happen to stroll down to the La
I went
Valencia?
to La Jolla just to see you guys.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Next time we'll have to like take you over to the hotel, and because it's
Okay.
changed a little bit, but
It's
a lot of
really
it's still
cool.
the same.
One of
Then
my
I want to
favorite,
go there.
yeah. One of my favorite things to do is to sit out on that balcony and look at the water. And
Yeah. And that was
Just have
that
a
part I think
really
is
expensive
not
cocktail.
changed. Yeah, really
That
expensive
sounds right.
cocktail. So, but yeah, exactly. But he kind of was a little bit like Dr. Seuss, I think, in some of his impressions of La Jolla and people of La Jolla.
Yes.
But anyway, he's got a little curmudgeonly there, I think, too.
Yeah, he was. He was.
Oh.
His drinking was always a problem. That
Yeah.
makes you a little surly. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, we do have some
Maybe I should
questions that
start
came in.
drinking.
So Jim, I love that you were looking for the whiteout to get. Jim had a little fun with a number 9 that he couldn't get out of his question, but I love it. I knew what you were talking about, Jim. So he thanks you, Joe, for your reflections. This is always a hard one, but maybe you have some ideas. What actors would you pick to play Marlowe and IQ?
IQ. I don't know any of the new actors.
I know.
I don't keep track of movies anymore, but it would be a younger Denzel.
Yes.
You know,
Totally.
yeah, somebody
For
who's
sure.
obviously intelligent
Mhm.
and has that quiet intensity. That's him. Marlowe, Brad Pitt, younger,
Oh,
Interesting.
and
I
that's
would
how I
not-
saw him
interesting.
was Brad Pitt with an attitude.
Huh.
Cool guy, good looking.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt can be very dark if he wants to. He can be very
Mhm.
intense if he wants to be. He's a
Mhm.
pretty good actor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So those were my two images.
interesting.
Hmm.
I love that. Okay. Neves on this says, Jeniffer mentioned that you write 7 days a week. How do you decompress, separate from the intensity of your characters?
Good question.
It's not that hard, really.
Good cocktail.
I go for a walk with my wife and my dog, and I live in a nice place, and there are mature trees, and we can walk to the ocean. I mean, it's not really that hard to decompress.
Hmm.
I can cut that off pretty easily.
You can compartment because you do write some pretty intense stuff. I mean, it's pretty gritty, intense stuff. So
I'm in the scene when I write it, like I'm there in the room, but when I'm done, I'm done.
okay.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. And Anastasia, hello, Anastasia. Thanks for being with us. This question is related to part of the discussion that you had earlier with Jeniffer about the possibility of Marlowe and IQ meeting. Do the characters in your IQ series inform or influence the ones in the Goodbye Coast? Or do you envision that the characters in this book will influence the next IQ book?
Wow.
Mm.
I don't know.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, I make things up on the fly, so I don't really know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going to happen in IQ6, but I'm writing it.
Interesting.
So, yes.
And it hasn't been a little bit harder writing the Marlowe that way, wasn't it?
In terms of world creation,
Yeah.
to start all over again, create a different world and a different LA and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
That took the most focus. But it's sort of this is what I do. So if you're doing something you know how to do, it's not that hard.
Yeah. Your friend Mike Lepica's on here. I think you say your name wrong, Mike.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't
I think I always say your name wrong. I'm sorry about that.
matter.
I'm saying everybody's name wrong, but he has a serious writing question for his friend Joe. When you started Goodbye Coast, did you know how it was going to end?
No, I only know when I start that the good guys win and the bad guys lose. That's all I know. That's it.
Did you write yourself into some corners?
I try to write myself into corners, and so does Mike.
Hmm.
You're trying to write yourself into an impossible corner and then write your way out because the audience is smart. You know, if you're doing problems that the audience can solve, why should they read you?
Yeah,
You know,
true.
so
True. Very
yes.
true. Love it.
It's
Mike,
one
love that
it's
you're
one of
here.
the rare things that Mike and I share.
I'm having a feeling that
A sneaker collection. We both have a sneaker collection.
Oh.
Yes.
What's your favorites?
I curate Mike's. He doesn't know anything.
So you make those suggestions. You send him the links.
Yes, I do. And then
Can I ask who
he
Mike
does
is?
He does what I say.
I
He
love
does
it.
what I tell him.
I love it. I love that. Good to
I'm
have you
gonna
here,
hear
Mike.
about this.
All right, another question from Anastasia. So she loves how you make the setting character in your books. Have you ever considered writing something set outside of LA? And if so, where?
Yes. IQ has gone to Vegas, but that's as far as it's gone. And what you're always trying to do is to set, you always want them to be a fish out of water, you know, either with the location or the culture there or the people there. And I would like to get him out of LA, but I don't know how. I don't know how to work that yet.
Yeah, it's got to, because it's got to be authentic of why he would be gone, why he would leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's an authenticity.
But now I have a reason to take Marlowe. I have a reason to take Marlowe to the UK because that's where
you
Ren
do. Yeah.
lived. So I'm hoping to get a free trip out to London out of that.
Wait, the thing that you don't do research, right?
That's right. I could do it.
Nobody from the publisher better be watching this. And I think you answered this earlier because you're not a fan of research on that. But did you reread or revisit Chandler's version of Marlowe before you started, or did you just rely on memory of the character?
No, I read everything.
You read everything. Reread.
Yeah. I read everything, and I had to make decisions about what I was going to keep from him and what I wasn't. Yeah. And so I needed to read all the books.
Were you ever afraid that it was going to influence you in some way to, it's hard to write about historical, and such beloved character.
I had to cut that loose. I brought forward as much as I could, but I had to cut that loose. Yeah. Because after a while, it would just weigh me down to always be concerned about that. So, yeah, I cut that loose pretty early.
Yeah.
It was my wife. I'm worried, and she says, honey, just do your best.
Good advice.
Boy, that's a great way to end this. That's the best advice for all of us.
They all agree with you, honey.
Just
You're genius.
I love it. Joe, such a pleasure having you. Always.
I really like being here. I really like seeing you. It's always a fun interview, which I can't say about too many interviews.
Oh.
And really, anytime you want me back, just yell. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, hopefully for the next IQ will be 2023. You will be in Warwick's in the store.
Yes.
Live.
And we'll go have a cocktail at La Valencia and toast
there you go.
Raymond Chandler. I love it. All right.
That sounds awesome.
Thank you, everybody. Order the book. It's in the chat, or just come by Warwick's. And Jeniffer, thank you again. Joe, tell your wife hi.
Mwah.
I will.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
We'll see ya.
Good night. Hey folks, this is Jeniffer, and as you know, The Premise is the official podcast of the San Diego Writers Festival, which, by the way, is happening this October 8th, in fact, 2022. It's going
live and in person.
Yeah, live and in person. I'm really, really excited. We have so many exciting things happening, so many exciting speakers. They're coming in from all over, and we want you to be there. So Coronado Public Library, the 4th annual San Diego Writers Festival.
SanDiegoWritersFestival.com.
You can subscribe to learn more about our programming and get on the list to win free books and all kinds of cool stuff happening. So
San Diego Writers Festival.com.
.com.